Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to learn a technique, not necessarily a recipe, although I am going to include the recipe just in case if you want one to start off with. But really this is going to focus on a technique that I just recently learned in a little tutorial class type training form that I did with Homesteading Family. Her name is Carolyn, her husband's name is Josh. You might already follow them. If you don't, I highly suggest that you do go find them and follow them. I will try and leave a link to them somewhere, either like a Facebook page or their YouTube or something in the description box down below, so that if you're interested, you can go and find them and follow them yourself. I have taken this course from them because I was curious, and I'm so glad that I did. And I really just wanted to pass along to you what I learned, because that's the whole theme of this channel. Is I'm just here to help others learn something new, if at all possible. And you know, the saying is, if you know better, you do better. So now that I know better and I'm doing better, I would like to show you so that you can know better, so that you can improve your life in whatever way, if this is something that is applicable to you. So, you know, on this channel, you've seen grocery hauls. If you've been around for any amount of time, you see how I'm trying to stretch our dollar, stretch every penny, and still feed our family. But if you've been to any kind of a grocery store lately at all, you know that the prices are going up, not down. They're not even staying the same. They are consistently going up, which makes it more and more difficult to feed your family. And not only that, to get the items that you can get within your budget to stay in your budget, if at all possible, and still be able to have enough food to eat, you're gonna have to sacrifice quality for the price, which I don't really like. And that's what we've done for years. And the further we go in life, the higher the prices and the lower the quality. So this technique is now allowing me to no longer have to buy sandwich bread in the store. There's no telling what is in that sandwich bread. Y'all see I have the one that I buy when I go to Sam's. That is the highest quality that I can find at the lowest price. And you know, just looking at sandwich bread, that is a rabbit hole. If you go down looking at every single brand, every single variety, and looking at the ingredients, you could spend hours, if not days, looking at every single one on the store shelves, and then have to find the one that you really feel most comfortable feeding your family. And how do you get it at a price that you can afford? Well, this technique should help you eliminate a lot of that worry, a lot of that stress, and a lot of that time and energy. And two things. One, first and foremost, you know exactly what's in that sandwich bread because you made it yourself, and you can control what goes in it and what stays out of it. So you can feel confident in feeding it to your family that you are giving them good, wholesome, healthy food. And then as a byproduct of that, or a side effect, is you control the costs. So you can drastically reduce your cost, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this video, by doing this at home yourself. And you think to yourself, yeah, I don't have time for that. You know, I work, or I'm just busy, our schedules are everywhere, we're hardly ever at home, whatever the case may be, or I'm not confident in my bread making skills. Or maybe you're like me and you say, every time I've tried a recipe for sandwich bread, it comes out flat, or it crumbles, or it's dry, or you have to eat it right then that day and it's not good the next day, or whatever it is. That was me. And all the work I put into it, and it wasn't good. The kids didn't want it, or they would eat it right then when it came out of the oven. But the next morning for breakfast, for toast, they did not want it. It wasn't good. And it wasn't me. I mean, it wasn't the recipe that I was using, and I tried several. It was the technique. So we're gonna show you the technique that I learned from Homesteading Family, from Miss Carolyn. And I'm gonna show it to you. And then that way you can use whatever recipe you want. It doesn't matter. The recipe only affects the flavor of the bread. It does not affect the quality necessarily of the bread. So you can pick whatever recipe you want. Maybe you find one on Pinterest like I did. Maybe it's a family recipe that's been passed down from your grandma or your great grandma, or maybe it's a recipe a friend gave you, or whatever, magazine, cookbook. Find whatever recipe that you want. This also, you can control the ingredients so that if there's an allergy, for example, my nephew is extremely allergic to eggs. He cannot have eggs in any form at all, not just cooked like scrambled eggs. He cannot have them in baked goods like bread or cake or cupcakes or cookies or anything like that. He cannot have egg at all. He will have to go to an emergency room. So this recipe that I'm gonna show you doesn't have egg. Some do, some don't. So you can control, like I said, what goes in it. So we're gonna learn how to read your dough so that you know how much flour should go in it, regardless of what your recipe says, how long you should knead it for, and then go from there. So let's get started. You think, what do I need? Do I need some kind of fancy equipment? No. If you have a KitchenAid mixer with like a dough hook, you can use that if you want to. You don't need it. So don't sit here and think, well, I don't have a mixer with a dough hook and I don't have a bread machine and I don't have all these things. You don't need it. This is all the equipment that you need right here. You need a couple of bowls, one to mix it in and one for it to rise. You're gonna need a spatula to begin the stirring process. Eventually you will go to your hands. You'll need a couple of measuring cups and some measuring spoons. And eventually you'll need a cutting board or something to put it on to slice it. And that is all the equipment that you need, stuff that you already have in your home. So let's get the ingredients together and I will show you how this goes. If you want to jot down this recipe, you can jot it down as we go. It is only yeast, water, sugar, salt, vegetable oil, and bread flour. That's it in this recipe. But like I said, use whichever recipe that you want to use. Just learn the technique that I'm about to show you. So let's get started and I will show you what it looks like. Now I've already eaten some out of this loaf, but it fills the whole bag. So this recipe that I'm showing you makes 2 of these. So it's, you put them end to end, you are more than a whole loaf of bread that you would get at the store. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay, I hope you can see, I've got my countertop all cleaned off. Oops, I didn't dry it completely, but cleaned off, sterilized, because we're gonna have to knead on this countertop. So we're gonna go ahead and get it going. So you need 2 1/4 cups of warm water. And when I say warm, I don't want you to get a thermometer out and check the temperature. Just like bath water. Not something hot to the touch, but not something cool either. Something that you would feel comfortable bathing a baby in. And then we're going to use, this is active dry yeast and it is Red Star yeast. I buy it on Amazon in the bulk, the bricks. And I give it in the 2-pack. I put one in the freezer and I open one and put it in a Ziploc bag and keep it in the refrigerator. So the yeast is also 2 1/4, but it is teaspoons. And then the recipe says a pinch of sugar, but I do more than a pinch. The yeast needs something to eat. So I do like a teaspoon-ish. And then you're just gonna stir this together and let it dissolve, or mostly dissolve. And then once you get this all incorporated together gently, we're gonna leave it alone and let it kind of start to bubble. Now this can take a different amount of time. Some recipes you'll see, let it sit for 5 minutes or whatever. It may not be 5 minutes. It's gonna depend on the temperature of your home. And that temperature is going to vary from day to day, from season to season. Right now, it is January. We still have a little bit of snow on the ground outside. It is cooler in the house than it normally is. In the summer, it's going to be warmer in here, especially if I'm running the dishwasher or if I'm running the washer and dryer, if I'm washing dishes with hot water right here. It's going to be different temperatures on different days and at different times of the day. So it may vary. But what you need to look for is when it's all bubbly and starting to get foamy, then you're gonna come back and you're gonna do your next step. So it has now been roughly 10 minutes because, like I said, it's just a little bit cooler in here. So this is kind of what you're looking for. Just a little foam there on the top. So we're not gonna disturb it. We're just gonna add the rest of our ingredients. Now again, follow your own recipe. I'm just gonna give you this one just for demonstration purposes. I do know that we like it. I do know that it is really, really good and it freezes beautifully. So we're gonna just use this recipe. So jot it down if you want. So to this, you're going to add 1/4 cup of sugar. So really, it's not a lot of sugar in this bread either. It's 1/4 cup for the whole thing, which makes 2 loaves. And then you're gonna use 1 tablespoon of salt. And you're gonna use 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. 2. And while I have it out and this has oil on it, I'm gonna go ahead and put 1 tablespoon of oil into the bowl that I'm gonna transfer it to for it to rise. Now I can put my measuring spoons away, set that aside. Now the only other thing we need to put in it is the bread flour. And in case you're wondering which I'm using, this is the one that I got on my last grocery haul at Sam's. This is the nothing fancy, just Members Mark bread and pizza flour. So what you're gonna do, now the recipe says 5.5 to 6.5 cups of flour. I'm not gonna go by what it says. I'm gonna go by what the dough tells me it needs to have. So before I put any flour in it, I'm gonna go ahead and stir this together, make sure everything's incorporated so I don't have like pockets of salt sitting different places. I want it all evenly distributed. You don't have to dissolve it, but stir it around. Okay, now I'm going to start, and I'm just gonna use a 1/2 cup measure cup. This is a 1/2 cup, and I'm just gonna start adding basically a 1/2 cup at a time. But here to get going, I'm gonna start with 1 cup. I'm gonna try to count, but I will probably lose count of how much flour I put in there. So you guys wanna keep up with it, you can, and you're just gonna stir it. Like I said, you can use a KitchenAid mixer if you want, or a bread machine if you want to do all of this part for you, but it's really easy. It doesn't take a lot of time. So you don't need the fancy equipment. So that was 1, so this is what, 1.5? And while we're talking about flour, use whatever flour you want. I mean, I guess if your recipe calls for bread flour, then use that. If you want to use whole wheat flour, if you want to get wheat and grind your own wheat and use that flour, do that. This is completely customizable. You make it however you want to make it for you and your family. So this makes 2 cups. And what you're gonna be looking for, eventually, see now we're to like the batter stage. It's like a batter. You wanna just get it all incorporated and keep adding the flour until the dough does not stick to the bowl. Until it's pretty much, for the most part, coming clean off the sides of the bowl. I've already forgot, what is this, 2.5? 2? 2.5? 2.5. And I've already scrubbed my hands, scrubbed under my fingernails really well. I'm getting there. So 3 cups. I'm only counting for you guys' sake. Really, if I'm just doing this at home, I'm not gonna count. I'm just gonna do it. Or if I'm trying to figure out how much it would cost, like I did the other day, this ended up costing, I figured out the cost of this. I went through and I Googled how many cups of bread flour are in a 25-pound bag. And then, you know, the same, how many tablespoons are in that vegetable oil, how many tablespoons are in the salt. And I know where I buy each item and I know how many ounces are in each item. So I was able to do the math and figure out how much it costs to make this recipe. And depending on how much flour, if I use 5 cups of flour, it costs $1.01 before tax. And if I go all the way up to like 6.5 cups of flour, then you're talking $1.21. Well, the bread that I've been buying at Sam's that you see on my grocery hauls comes out to $1.98 a loaf. And that is not terrible bread, but it's also not like the most healthy bread out there either, or the most expensive bread. So just by doing this myself, I'm already saving us pretty much half cost. You can't buy a loaf of bread for $1 and then add in the comfort of knowing exactly what's in it. I mean, to me, it's totally worth it. You see, it's not hard. It's just a matter of stirring it together in a bowl. And see, now we're to the point where I don't need this anymore. I'm gonna get rid of my spoon. I guess if you have one of those like Danish dough whisks, that would be good to use. I don't have one, but it just goes to show you that you don't need one. No pun intended. So we're just gonna start using our hands. And once it gets to the point where it kind of is, see, it doesn't really stick to the bowl very much. It does at the bottom. Then we're gonna start kneading. So this is the first technique. You want to just add flour until it gets to this point where it's not, it comes away from the bowl. It doesn't stick to the bowl, okay? And then we're gonna flour our surface. And I'm not even using a half cup. Pull this out. Okay. This is the part I don't want to get on my hands. And then you're going to start kneading. And then the next thing you need to watch for when you're kneading, you know, a recipe might say knead for 5 to 7 minutes until it's smooth and elastic. Well, what does smooth and elastic mean? So that was where I was going wrong. What is smooth and elastic? 5 to 7 minutes. Do I set a timer? What do I do here? So the first part of kneading is just mainly getting the rest of the flour worked into the dough. And I'm probably kneading it incorrectly. But hey, you know, we're learning as we go here. And then you're just gonna keep kneading. And what you're gonna look for when you're kneading is for it to pass what we call the window pane test. Let me show you what that means. So at first you can see how it's real rough looking. You don't want it to be rough, you want it to be smooth. But then eventually you're gonna pull off like a golf ball size amount, put it into a ball, and you're gonna start trying to like thin it out, stretch it out, and then if it breaks, it's not ready. When it's ready, you will be able to thin it out like that, stretch it out to where it is paper thin, and then you can hold it up to the light, and if you can see light coming through it, but there's no tears, then it's ready. That's the window pane test. So we're just gonna keep on kneading here, and then in just a few minutes, we will check it. Okay, so we're just about there. It's smooth. It doesn't really stick anymore to anything. So we're gonna test it because you don't wanna over knead it. There is such a thing. So we're gonna pull off another like, you know, golf ball size amount and start to thin it out, stretch it out. Be careful not to rip it. You just wanna gently get it as thin as you can. See, it's not tearing. Just get it kind of paper thin, and then you want to look through here up to the light and see, yep, I can see light through the stretched out places. So that means your dough is ready. So we're just gonna try to get it into a ball. We've got our bowl here with the oil in it. Turn it a few times to coat it in the oil. And then we're gonna set it in a warm place with a tea towel on top. So let me show you, because it's cold. This is what I do. You don't have to do it. I'm not telling you, this is the trick. This is not part of the trick that I learned. This is just what I'm doing because it's January and it's freezing. Let me show you how I warm it up. All right, so you could turn your oven on to 200, and when it gets to 200, turn it off, and then just set the bowl inside the oven with the towel on top and just let it rise in there. I don't want to do that. I feel like it might dry my dough out. So what I've done, I figured out, is to put my griddle here and put it on the very lowest possible setting. And while I've been doing this, I've had this clean tea towel laying on top. So now the tea towel is nice and warm as well. So I'm just gonna set this on top of the griddle and place my nice warm tea towel over the top. And we're gonna let it sit and rise until it is double in size. Okay, so this is ready. I'm gonna set the towel aside because I need it again. Sorry, the dishwasher's running. I had to start it. I couldn't wait. So now that it's double in size, you're going to, I'm gonna take these back off. You're gonna punch it down, clean hands, and have your loaf pans ready, greased and ready to go. And then you're just gonna cut your dough in half. Roll it out into a rectangle that's about 8 inches wide. It doesn't have to be perfect. And if I see any like really big bubbles, then I will pop the bubbles, so that I don't have air pockets in my loaf of bread. And then, I mean, it's gonna keep doing this. So you just roll it up like you would a cinnamon roll dough. And then you're just gonna place it seam side down in your loaf pan, like that. So again, you're just gonna roll it up and put it in your loaf pan with the seam at the bottom. You don't have to pinch the seams, just put it on the bottom. That's it. Now you're gonna put these back over there with the towel on them to rise. In the meantime, while I'm waiting on them to rise, I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my oven to 375. Okay, it's been about an hour. Again, the time is gonna vary based on your home, the temperature and atmosphere in your home. But this is what we're looking for. Not just overflowing, but you want them to be slightly higher than the edge of the pan. So we're gonna slide these into the oven, and I've already unplugged it. I just unplugged it so it's not hot, because I didn't want them to start baking on the bottom. So we're gonna slide these into the oven, and in my oven, they bake 21 minutes, but yours may be different. You need to bake it until they are nice and golden brown, and when you thump it or tap it, it sounds hollow. Okay, so this is done, and this is what they look like. So they want to be pretty and golden brown, and when you tap, it sounds hollow. That's how you know it's done. So I'm gonna get these out. Okay, so you get them out of the oven, and then I just take a stick of butter, and I just kind of lightly run the stick of butter over the top of the loaf. Not a lot, just enough, like this, all over the loaf. And then I leave them sitting to cool for just, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, like this, until they are cool enough that I can handle them without burning myself. And then I transfer them from these pans to a wire rack to cool completely the rest of the way before I slice them. Okay, so they've been sitting on this cooling rack, cooling for the last, I don't know, hour or so. They're not like cool completely, like 100%, but they're probably 95% cool. They're just ever so slightly warmer than my body temperature, which is fine. So one of these I'm gonna put into a freezer bag and put it into the freezer for later, and I am not gonna slice it. I'm just gonna put it in whole and just try to get as much air out as I can, and it will freeze just fine like this. Then it will not be dried out. And then when we're ready, all I have to do is thaw it and slice it. So that's half of it. But you can see that's more than a loaf of bread. That's a little bit bigger, because the loaves I was buying was about like this. So this is this much more bread than I was buying at a loaf at the store. So part of this is going in the freezer, and the other one I'm gonna slice now. This is also great for those of you who only buy like a half loaf at a time. At the grocery store, they'll sell like half loaves. So if you're single, you live by yourself, you don't really use bread that much, you could do this, throw one in the freezer and have one for right now. So I'm gonna just cut it and show it to you, because we are down to like 4 or 5 slices left of that one loaf. after we've had lunch. So this is sliceable every time. And I just use this bread knife or a serrated knife, and then it slices beautifully every time. It doesn't crumble, it doesn't tear. It toasts beautifully. Grilled cheese sandwiches made out of this, hot ham and cheese sandwiches made out of this are wonderful, or just a regular sandwich. So you can see it's soft, it doesn't rip. When I spread peanut butter on it, the bread that I was buying, it was so light and so airy that I couldn't even spread peanut butter without ripping a hole in the middle of the bread. This is so much better. So this will get sliced completely and put into another bag, and we will just keep pulling all the air out of it. Every time we go to get some out, we will just squeeze as much air out as we can and just use this up. So that is gonna do it for this video. I hope you learned something today. I hope you learned how to read your dough and not your recipe. Remember, that's just a technique that you need to learn the technique, and then you can use any recipe that you want, but at least you know what is exactly in this bread that you're putting into your family's mouths. There's no preservatives, no any weird chemicals or anything like that, stuff that you can't pronounce. You get to control what goes in it, what does not go in it. You get to control how thick or thin you slice it. It's pretty cool. And this bread, this recipe is amazing. We love it. I am not buying bread anymore, and it has also cut our food cost as well. So that's today's video. Check the description box down below. I will try to link to the Homesteading Family for you so you can go check that out yourself and support them and their content. And we will see y'all on the next video. Bye. Love ya.